It was late when I saw the creature, running flat out down the middle of a country highway, somewhere up in the Alleghenys. I had gotten off the interstate. Hitchhiking on the 4 lanes was illegal. Last thing I needed was to get myself picked up by some state trooper. I had a bit of a record, see. Might have been an outstanding warrant or two, as well. And I needed to be in Phillipsburg by that Saturday. There was an opportunity there a fellow like me just couldn't pass up. So, I left the interstate and followed an old country highway that seemed to be going in the right direction. After it got to twisting and turning all to hell and back, though, I wasn't so sure. A few vehicles passed me by, mostly rusty farm trucks with sour-looking men and battered ball caps behind the wheel. Not the types to pick up a hitcher, no matter how big I smiled. When night fell, I found myself still walking along the berm of that rough patched asphalt, surrounded by nothing but old-growth forest. There was no choice but to just keep going. I figure it was sometime after midnight. I didn't have a watch or phone in those days. When I heard it, a rapid thudding. At first, I didn't pay it any mind. In my experience, there's a lot of strange noises in the woods at night, most of which amount to nothing. But this noise was getting closer. When I did turn to look, I nearly screamed, maybe 100 or 50 so yards back. Visible in the lights of a half-moon, was something like no man or beast I ever saw. Lanky and tall, with impossibly long arms. Its head was broad, triangular in shape, centered low between wide shoulders. It was running to beat the band and straight at me. I did not freeze. I was not paralyzed by terror. Not that I'm a particularly brave man, mind you, but some primal part of me flooded my brain with a chemical that screamed, "Run." I obeyed. Vaulting over the guardrail, I tumbled down an embankment, gathered my feet underneath me, and sprinted off into the woods. It was dark under those trees. Moonlight was blocked from reaching the forest floor. Low-hanging limbs slapped my face, leaving scratches and welts. Roots snatched at my feet, making me stumble. Something hooked my rucksack. I spun free of the pack straps and plunged on, leaving all my worldly possessions hanging from a deadfall branch. Behind, I heard the creature slide down the hard scrabble of the embankment and come crashing into the trees. It was gaining on me. It was either an eternity or just a few seconds later, I can't rightly say, that I came across the path. No animal trail. This was hard-packed and almost wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side. It made for faster running, so I took it. Soon after, even over the sound of my rasping breath, I heard the thudding footfalls of the creature behind me, closer still. Just as I thought my heart was about to explode in my chest, I broke into a clearing. Moonlight silvered the long grass. A weathered picnic table sat underneath a shade tree. Battered lawn chairs surrounding a fire ring. On the far side, just 100 feet away, was a cabin. I ran for it with everything I had left. I knew the door would be locked. The windows were shuttered, and no light seeped through the gaps. This was somebody's hunting camp, and it was closed for the season. The creature would catch me on the porch, I had no doubt. It would tear me to pieces while I banged futilely on that sturdy slab of wood standing between me and safety. But I ran for it anyway. There was nowhere else to go. Now, I've never been much on religion. It tends to get in the way of things I need to do to get by. But maybe there is a benevolent force in this universe that occasionally takes pity on a guy like me. Because when I leapt up on that porch and grabbed the doorknob, it turned. The door swung open. I had just ducked inside, throwing my weight against the door when the monster hit. The impact knocked me to the floor and stole my wind. The creature stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the moonlight. It loomed over me, bigger than I had thought, all teeth and claws. Sinew dripped under its skin. Its chest heaved as it drew in gulps of air. It swung the door shut behind it. The cabin became very dark. I felt a vice-like grip on my ankle. The creature's touch was icy. Before I could even draw a breath to scream, it flung me aside. I heard scraping noises, wood dragged across wood. As my eyes adjusted to the deeper darkness inside the cabin, I saw the creature piling furniture against the door. A plank table, a threadbare sofa, rocking chairs, even a bookcase full of moldering paperbacks. When it was done, it leaned back against the barricade and released a long breath. Crab walking backwards, I pressed myself into the furthest corner. I think I may have whimpered, because the creature's head snapped around to look at me. A shaft of moonlight slipped between the shutters of the window. Illuminating half of its awful face, the thing regarded me with yellow eyes. It pressed a scaly finger, tipped with a wickedly barbed claw to its lips. Shh, it hissed. They're coming. I fainted. When I regained consciousness, the sun was up and I was alone. The creature's barricade had been shoved haphazardly aside. Light streamed through the open door. Outside, the grass of the cabin's clearing had been trampled flat. By who or what, I have no idea. Following the path from the night before led me to a turnout along the highway. From there, I made my way back to the interstate, where I caught a ride with a trucker headed east. I never did find my rucksack, but then again, I didn't really go looking for it either. I didn't want to be in those woods any longer than I had to be, and I sure as hell didn't want to be in them after dark. Phillipsburg didn't pan out like I had hoped, but hey, it's the story of my life. There were other opportunities in other places, some good, some not so much. Life goes on, you know? The only reason I tell this story now is because my court-appointed therapist thinks it will help with the nightmares. I've told this story I don't know how many times before, in dive bars, flop houses, and homeless camps. Talking about it has never done me a lick of good. My therapist seems like a nice kid though. She's young, eager to help, and still thinks she can make a difference. Life will crush that out of her in its own sweet time. Don't need me for that, so I'll humor her by posting this. Believe it if you want, or don't. It's no skin off my nose either way. But if you're smart, you'll stay out of the woods and the Alleghenys after dark. I've been on fire lookout duty for several years now. It's a great gig for someone needing to be outdoors, maybe just away from things. I can't claim that it's easy. It does get lonely out there sometimes among nothing but nature. And then there's bugs. Finding snakes in your outhouse, a spider on your face when you're trying to sleep. But really, I wouldn't trade it for the world. But when you've been doing this for a long time, you learn things. A lot of other lookouts have learned them, and we don't talk about a lot of it. You just learn that's how things are when you're out in the forest. And there are unspoken rules you have to follow, for your own good. Even if you're not planning on applying for a lookout job, even as a hiker, you should listen. Some of these things I was told by rangers. Others are just mine, and mine alone. First, if you're entering this forest, you gotta remember that you don't live here. You're visiting its house, and you better be respectful. It's just how it is. Don't break branches off trees. Don't carve your name on the bark. You leave them alone. Buy firewood here if you're staying the night. And don't you dare chop a tree down. There's exceptions, sure. Break off a dying or dead branch. Cut up a fallen tree that hasn't hit the ground. You won't get mad about that. And you don't want to make it mad. I've seen what happens when someone does. Secondly, if you're staying overnight, don't stay in the clearings. You can camp on the edge, but you don't want to be out in the open. If it sees you, it might not like you. I've seen how this thing hunts. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I've had to call in more than a few untimely deaths from people who didn't listen to the rules. Even I won't stay in a clearing past dark. The moment the sun goes down, you get out of the open space. You don't want it to see you after dark. That's when it hunts. If it feels like hunting, and it doesn't always want to, but it's better to not risk it. Bear? No, I'm not talking about a bear. Bears are easy. You make some noise, pull your jacket open to try to be bigger, and they go running. You get really used to that out here. Wolves are trickier, but they don't really want to bother us. This thing is older than bears and wolves, but I'm not about to cut it open and try counting its rings. There's always a danger with wildlife when you're out here. The rule is generally to keep your distance, to stay far away, and if you do encounter something that you don't want to mess with, well, there's ways to deal with it. Where was I? Oh, right. The guidelines to follow when you're out here. If you're going to work out here, you need to learn what to do if you see it, and it'll be a challenge the first time. Most people get too scared to do things right, and they get killed. It's not unusual to see it from the tower. It'll make its rounds, and you'll hear people on the radio saying they saw the old oak moving around. I think it knows all of our faces and habits now. I think it likes to check on us. We're probably just part of its whole ecosystem now, and it regards us like it does everything else. That means we have to follow its rules, the same as all the woodland creatures. That's why it's so important to follow the rules, not just doing your job as a lookout, but by doing things right. No cutting down healthy trees, no overfishing, no excessive hunting. If you start a fire, you put that out, and you make sure there's no chance of something bad happening. It'll know. It'll check on you. You'll know if it doesn't like what it sees. If you see it from the tower, just let it pass. It'll move on its own time. Don't stare at it. It knows when you're staring at it. If you see that giant, bone-colored oblong shape that we think is its face, just look down. Go back to your work. Look in a different direction. Anywhere except at it. It really doesn't like being stared at. Staring at it will get you killed. Jeremy stared at it the first time he saw it. That poor kid. We had hopes for him, but that thing doesn't like being stared at. We sent him home in a box. What was left of him anyways. It's just what you do. You let it do its thing. There's nothing we can do to really stop it if it doesn't like something. You just die, and that's that. Guns aren't going to do anything. Fire just makes it angry. It isn't afraid. It doesn't care about anything but the forest. Even then, we're not sure if it really cares about the forest or if it cares about its hunting ground. Hell, none of us are going to ask it to find out. Sometimes at night it'll come to the tower. Might be hunting. It might just need to see something. I don't know. Keep your eyes closed. You'll know when it's there. You'll feel your skin crawl, and you'll feel heavy. If you can move, pull your blankets over your head. Just keep your eyes closed. You'll know when it leaves. God, you'll know. And the last? Well, the last is the most important. You're going to be out in the woods, and you're going to find it. You'll hear nothing, like the sound just vanishes. You'll think you've gone deaf. Even if you scream, you won't hear anything. And it'll make you go a little mad. That's when you know you're there. It'll look like a tree, but not a tree. Taller than anything, with that empty shape for a face. Its roots are deep and long. It's old. We all know it. You'll know it too. But if you find it, and you stand there, well, listen to me very carefully. You look at the ground. You bow your goddamn head in reverence. Kneeling helps, but it doesn't matter. You just look down, and you say, you speak, even if you don't hear a sound, that you are sorry for bothering it. Then you wait. Sometimes it'll let you go. You'll hear again. You'll feel like you haven't eaten in days. Once you can hear, you can call the nearest tower and confirm you're alive. You radio whoever is closest, and you tell them you're alive. Then you just gotta go right back to your tower. It let you go. That's all it wanted. But sometimes it does something else. Sometimes it's hungry. It'll take whatever it wants from you. Blood, skin, soul. Whatever it feels like taking. Whatever it needs. It'll hurt. Fuck, will it hurt. But it doesn't take more than it needs. It knows the balance. And it will give you an acorn. No matter how bad you're hurt, you go back to the tower and plant that acorn. Rescue will probably get to you in time. You're here with us now. The forest is going to get a little bigger every year. It'll inch through a little more until it starts taking towns for itself. Nothing we can do to stop it. All we're here for is to make sure no fires get out of control. We've had a good record so far, even with the climate getting all messed up. Because I sure as hell don't want to see that old oak when it's really hurting.